Going back to our colonial days, um, British homelanders and other Europeans really saw Americans, and I've used this term in our class before, as being provincial. In other words, being unsophisticated. Okay? And of course, Europeans having such a high opinion of themselves and having been the creators of the Renaissance era and artistic forms. You have Shakespeare, you have other ancient Greek writers, you had the Renaissance, you had all kinds of various different movements out of Europe that came from an intellectual standpoint. They didn't think too highly of America. So in the antebellum period in America, many Europeans would note, how come there aren't a whole lot of great literary works that come from the United States of America? Hmm. All the best literary works come from Europe. One, they're noticing some things about America that are true. There hadn't really been a great sense of literary contributions and artistic contributions. That's not wrong. Two, that's also a little self-serving as well. Uh, there may be a little narcissism involved within that, but otherwise, they recognize there wasn't a whole lot. Americans recognize this too, and they recognize the need to have stronger art and literary works to contribute to a global scale that would be recognized across the world. So you began various different movements, first with art in and of itself. You have this era in American society, the antebellum period, where Romanticism would be espoused. A true belief in the human spirit, a true belief in the good and the positivity of life. And you can create that in various different works of art. A sense of nationalism also began around this period too. We are distinctive from Europeans. We were born of Europeans as a nation, but we are not Europeans. We fought a couple of different wars for independence, proving that we're not Europeans. But we are no less sophisticated in our own right. We bring other things to the table, things that they may just not be able to see. Otherwise, though, it was deemed as necessary as starting various different revivals in artistic forms. So you have various different schools that are developed so as to start building those aspects. The Hudson River School was developed in New York in the 1830s as a result of there being a strong lack of major contributory art. So the Hudson School was developed to be America's first truly artistic school to build the art culture in America. And it still influences America to this day, that whole movement of art. And I have a number of friends who are art majors and artists, and they're very creative. And they prove to me, the layperson who's not an artist, there are some wonderful people who are very creative in America that can contribute anything on a grand scale. Okay? But it was the Hudson School that really developed that at first. But then you also look into literature. Dating back to ancient times, you had Greek tragedy. Of course, you had Shakespeare and so many different great literary works. Dante. You had so many great works that came from Europe. Hmm, there's none such from the United States. Okay, that also gets noticed. An American literary movement really gets rooted in the idea of defeating that notion that the United States isn't contributing anything on a literary basis. And in the antebellum period, you really begin to see American writers come to the forefront. So Walt Whitman came to fame around this era for his poetic works and other writings that explained um, kind of the doldrums of the period, and how it's like maybe to be a little bit different. There were rumors that maybe he was homosexual or whatnot, and maybe he was writing about coming to terms with that and how he had social backlash from various different viewpoints. Okay, so there may be some of that. Uh, Herman Melville wrote one of the all-time great literary works in world history. He's an American. He wrote, of course, Moby Dick. Um, There she blows. That's what I'm talking about. How you have whalers looking for the big whale out there who had once sunk a boat and wanting retribution for that. There's a several hundred page act of work just searching for this big whale. Okay? But there is a deeper meaning behind Moby Dick that goes along with it. What are you truly searching for? What is it that truly ails you? It's somewhat metaphoric in a lot of different ways. So it has a deeper meaning behind the actual writing. And then you have antebellum literature in the South. The antebellum South produced many different great literary works, some that praised the idea of Southern value and the Southern mindset, and others that questioned what exactly things were. Edgar Allan Poe wrote various different works, like The Raven, for example, that really is a question of the human condition. Nevermore. You have people who realize that maybe in the South things aren't necessarily super great for everyone, and is slavery the right thing? They would often write about that in somewhat of an abolitionist stance, just kind of hidden in metaphoric value. But otherwise, you have Southerners who are contributing to a literary sense that bring more of a regional type mindset and aspect that really question not just the overall, but also sometimes really pay tribute to the Southern way of life and how it's different than elsewhere, even in other places around the United States. And then, of course, you have a whole transcendentalist movement of literary works that really kind of espouses something different. Um, Transcendentalism really examines kind of a reasoning process. What is the reason of life? What is this reason that governs nature? Could it be a higher power? Could it be a God? Could it maybe give reason as opposed to rationality for various different types of things that occur in life? Why do things happen? Really takes a deeper look into the inner self and the reason behind the way you are and why things happen the way they do. And so you have a whole movement of literary works surrounding the idea of transcendentalism. And you have some great writers who write about these different types of things. You have various different visions in and around the idea of transcendentalism, beginning with writers like Ralph Waldo Emerson being one of them. Henry David Thoreau is another transcendentalist writer. So you have various different works that come into play who espouse the idea of the inner self, reasoning over rationalism, and why things may be different, and why things occur in nature, and how you can envision yourself being a part of that as a reason for occurring in nature. So you have a very strong sense of literary work in the antebellum period. You have your works of art started by the Hudson School. You have your literary works that are emphasized somewhat regionally. Herman Melville, Walt Whitman, but then you have Southerners, Thoreau, and Edgar Allan Poe really in the South, but then you have others, transcendentalists like Thoreau and Emerson. So it's an interesting time for some great American literary works that strongly contribute on the global scale.